All right, let's take a look at chapter 19. We're going to take a look at the Renaissance Mass. We've looked at the madrigal, we've looked at the motet, now we're going to look at the Mass. All right, so the Renaissance Mass is different than the medieval Mass. It went through some changes, just like there was a lot of changes with all other art forms as well. What the Mass is the reenactment of the sacrifice of Christ. It's a very solemn ritual that has to do with part of the religious aspects of the Catholic Church. There is a daily service which has two collections of prayers. Remember, we talked about the liturgy being kind of fixed to the calendar as well. So you have these ones that stay the same, which are called the ordinary, and then you have the proper, which can change. All right, they're all in Latin, and except for the Kyrie, interestingly enough, which is in Greek. But for all intents and purposes for this class, just know that the Mass is in Latin. And so what I want you to know are the parts of the ordinary. There are 5 parts that I want you to know, and they are the Kyrie, the Gloria, the Credo, the Sanctus, and the Agnus Dei, the ones in blue right here. Those are the 5 parts of the ordinary or the fixed portion of the Mass. Kyrie, Gloria, Credo, Sanctus, Agnus Dei. The ones in the light yellow or tan on the right side, those could change. Those are called the variable or the proper. All right, so we're looking at the ordinary, which means every time those are the same text. Same text, so a composer writing music would always write to the exact same text. The Reformation and Counter-Reformation were going on around this time. I don't know if you've heard much or learned much about that, but the Reformation was when Martin Luther, who was an Augustinian monk, was very frustrated with the Catholic Church and some of the things that were going on. You'll maybe have heard the story of how he took this paper and nailed it to the church doors, his 95 Theses in 1517, very historic moment, where he said, these are the things that the church is doing wrong. It needs to change. And because of that, he was excommunicated from the Catholic Church. They said, get out of here. We don't like anybody telling us what to do or what not to do. So that began the Protestant movement. The Protestant movement was different because it was separating from the things that were going on in the Catholic Church. So one of the things that Martin Luther believed was that congregational singing should be more important and that everyone should be able to be a part of that. And that became a very important part of Christian worship. The music that everybody could sing to, not just this formal presentation of the prayers. Martin Luther also looked up to Josquin, interestingly enough, who was a big proponent of polyphonic worship music. There's a picture of him, a painting of Martin Luther. Then, because of this Reformation that was going on, there was a Counter-Reformation or the Catholic Reformation. So this was kind of the reaction of the Catholic Church. They started to look at the things that had changed and they tried to say, okay, we need to get back to some of our core beliefs here. So returning to Christian piety and looking at the poor, trying to combat heresy, trying to combat some of the things that have gone corrupt there. The Council of Trent was an important historical aspect of the Counter-Reformation where several religious leaders came together and they decided what was allowed and what was not allowed. One of the things that the Council of Trent was concerned about was music in the church. They felt like music had gotten too extravagant. There was way too many embellishings, way too much about the singer and the virtuosity of the singer, and less about the words. Remember, we started with the music being added to the words to give the words more meaning. Now we've gone to the far side of having the music be the main focus and you almost lose the words. And so they felt that there needed to be more of a focus on hearing and understanding the words. And they felt like anything different than that would have been irreverent, an irreverent attitude that the church musicians had. And they thought that all of this polyphony that had gotten very complex covered up the meaning of the text, that you couldn't really hear the text anymore. There were also some rules about instruments and what instruments you could use in church, and they were really careful about bringing in secular music into the church, and so that was also a hot topic as well. Um, so their recommendation was this. They wanted a pure vocal style, none of this fancy polyphony stuff. They didn't want to have virtuosity. They wanted to really respect the integrity of the text. And they did advocate for some return to Gregorian chant, which was a very much simpler than polyphony. So they didn't want to have polyphony. Well, in comes Giovanni Pierluigi, I said that wrong, da Palestrina. For short, we'll call him Palestrina. Very important Italian composer. He was also an organist. He was a choir master, worked at the St. Peter's Church in Rome. And if you haven't been there, you need to go. Pretty cool. There's a picture, a painting of him. Palestrina worked at the Vatican, and that was where you might have seen in history books or other such work, the Sistine Chapel ceiling painted by Michelangelo. Here is a portion of the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Quite remarkable painting. But anyway, he worked at the same place, so he's there with Michelangelo. So one of the things he did was he was able to capitalize on the needs of the Counter-Reformation of reducing polyphony, but he was able to do it somehow with polyphony. So he was able to do this a cappella style that still showcased the text in a very clear vocal way, but it still had polyphony. He wrote a ton of sacred music, over 100 masses, and the one that I want you to listen to, or the portion of the one, is called the Pope Marcellus Mass. It's for an all-male a cappella choir. You're going to hear soprano, alto, 2 tenor lines, 2 bass lines. The sopranos at this time were boy sopranos, not female sopranos, and the altos would have been male altos, or another word, they might be called countertenors. So they were very trained professionals, and so that's going to give it a little more of a strong sense. This isn't just congregational singing. But I want you to listen to the Gloria and see if the words restrained, serene, celestial, if they speak to you as you listen to this. It is through composed as well. You're going to hear monophonic opening, and you're going to hear some changing in textures between homorhythmic and polyphonic textures. There's a real clarity of the words, though. I want you to really listen to how clear it is to hear the words. And still yet have polyphony, which really was moving more towards this consonant harmony that music was moving towards, and would certainly get to pretty soon after this. So take a listen to Palestrina's Gloria from the Pope Marcellus Mass, and this was convincing the Council of Trent that you could still have polyphony and hear the words. Thank you.